Good morning, everybody. I hope that you're going to enjoy this. It's not a lecture. It's like a series of lectures that we're going to go right through until midnight. Not our time, thank goodness, but Australian time. Linda Farrell is going to present this talk. She has already given this talk she says this is the fourth time she's giving it to EGGSA. She was born in South Africa and graduated from the University of Pretoria with a science degree in maths and computer science. So she knows what she's doing with computers and things. And she runs a website, DNA for Genealogy in South Africa. And I hope that all of you that are interested in DNA, visit that website, that Facebook page rather, on a regular basis. DNA rather reminds me of people that like to use a drone. When there's a security problem, they want to fly a drone. So the drone goes out, but you still need a boot on the ground to arrest somebody. And it's much the same with the DNA. The DNA will give us a lot of pointers, but unfortunately, there's still the groundwork to piece together where everybody fits in. So without any further ado, I'm going to let Linda loose on the first part of the lecture, which is why, where, and how do I test. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction, David. Yes, so for those who've been here before, I'm going to run the 4 sessions on the hour. It will get more complicated as I go along, and the last one will be solving a family mystery, and I'll go through some examples. So I'll start on the hour, and we will have, after each session, a little bit of time for questions and then a break. So the length of the break will depend on how many questions there are at the end and how we go. You can, if you ask me questions in between, you can do it in Afrikaans or English. I'll probably answer in English just to make it more inclusive, and the terminology is easier for me in English than Afrikaans, but you're welcome to ask your question in any of the 2 languages. I am not professionally and academically trained in DNA, so I've taught myself these things, so keep that in mind. And if you are someone who knows something that I don't know, or pick up something that I've said that's not 100% correct, please tell me. I'm all open for that. So let's start. So, and the other thing is, if you feel like the first session or the second session is not for you, please just come in later. If it's too simple, if you've already tested and things like that, you're welcome to join us a little bit later. Or if it gets to a point where you are not yet and you don't feel that it means anything, by all means leave and come back if you want to. Okay, so let's start with the why, where, and how do I test. So this will just be a brief introduction to the tests available. And oh yes, something I will do is copy the links of websites and other things to the chat as I go. I hope I can do that. I'll do the first few is just basic information. These are just very helpful websites with lots of information on various DNA issues, and a very handy 3 links to have. So the first thing we will discuss here is, why do we test, and what is this one test everyone is talking about? I'll go through how does it work, what do we get from it, where do we test, and how do I decide which test to do. So why do we test? Often out of curiosity. It's to confirm or refute a genealogical hypothesis. It is to solve unknowns or mysteries around adoption, unknown or misattributed parentage, name changes, and so forth. Or it is merely to help other people solve their mysteries. So to give you an example, I did the test 11 years ago out of curiosity. That's how I started. I didn't have a specific reason to do it. I then got to the point where I had to prove a situation in my own family. My father's sister was born in the Boer War to a mother that was over 40. So somewhere down the line, or during this, my own research, some of the research just questioned this child, whether she belonged to this family for those reasons, which is, it's all plausible. It could have been that she didn't belong to that family. But I then tested one of her descendants, and it was proven that she was a sister of my grandfather. Then I didn't have any unknowns in my own family. We thought we knew everything until February last year, when out of the blue, half sister of my mum turned up. Our family didn't know about her. She didn't know that she had a different father than the one who brought her up. So both families, by accident, we found each other. Even though she's a half aunt for me, she's my age. So she's all connected with my mum now, and my mum's sisters, and everyone's happy about this young sister that they found. And she's accepted the fact that what has happened has happened. Anything can happen. You can also be asked about someone, for example, if I'm busy doing research to help someone else find their biological parent, I might suggest along the way extra tests to test extra people who may prove or disprove a specific line. So you may be asked by someone, can you please do a test just to prove or disprove something? So there's various reasons why we do these. So in the point of what is this one test everyone is talking about, we need to look at the basics of DNA before we can actually start. I'm trying to simplify this because it can be quite, very detailed. But we are born with 23 pairs of chromosomes, which is 22 autosomal and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. Those 23 pairs are contained in the nucleus of every single cell. So chromosomes were passed down from our parents through combinations of their pairs, so 46 chromosomes. Our autosomal and sex chromosomes contain a total of about 20,000 genes, and these genes are 99.9% identical in human beings, but the small variations in these genes determine the rest of our genetic makeup. And if you ever come across the word autosomes, that's the same as the autosomal chromosomes. When we look at the female chromosomes, you have the 22 autosomes and an X and an X sex chromosome. In males, you've got the 22 chromosomes with a X and a Y sex chromosome. So, like I've said before, the 23 pairs of chromosomes, the 22 autosomal and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. The tests we're all talking about are the autosomal DNA test. So this specific session doesn't cover the X and the Y sex chromosomes. It focuses on the 22 autosomal chromosomes. We will talk about the other tests in the other sessions, but we're basically talking about this one test that everyone talks about, all the companies offer, and that's the autosomal DNA test. You will often get that these tests are the ones, these tests are the ones that are advertised most because it is offered by all the companies. So any ancestry DNA test will be the autosomal DNA test. So next we're going to look at how does this actually work. So you purchase a test online, you choose a company to purchase from, and you decide which test, usually an autosomal DNA test if it's your only test, or the first test you do. Then you receive this test kit in the mail. It is a test tube with instructions, a form to sign, and an envelope to send it back. So then you do, as part of this kit, you do a cheek swab or you collect saliva. And the cheek swab is included, and it looks like a earbud. And you put this, after you've swabbed your cheeks, you put this into a test tube and you seal it, and it goes in an envelope. The test tube for saliva collection, if it's not a cheek swab test, it's a saliva collection test sometimes. The saliva collection test seems to have a higher fail rate. So you have to really follow the instructions very closely. And then if you have finished this, you have to courier it. If you mail it back from South Africa, courier it back to the testing company. And if you do that, fill the form in as a test kit or a genealogical test rather than DNA on the form. Anna-Marie is here. She sends back tests once a month in the middle of the month. So if you join our Facebook group, that I'll give you later, I'll give you the link to that. If you join our Facebook group, you'll get updates of when Anna-Marie is sending them back. It just makes it a little bit easier, and I think there's quite a cost saving by doing it in a batch rather than sending it back by yourself. The best way to communicate with Anna-Marie is by email, so she can keep track of who's sending her back what. Then the results are available online after a few weeks, and the results are always available through an account you set up, and we get updates on that account as more people test. We'll go into detail about what the different companies are offering as we go along. So what do we get from these ATDNA or autosomal DNA tests? We get ethnicity estimates. We get a match list, which is basically your cousins of different degrees. And we can usually download our raw DNA file. Something to keep in mind, at Family Tree DNA, there are different tests. So if you pick Family Tree DNA as the one where you want to do your test, it's called the Family Finder test there. Okay, so we're going to look at the three different, or at least the two different ones. The raw, the ethnicity estimates and the cousin list. So the ethnicity estimates is the one thing that is actually all over the place advertised. So this is the one that's pulling people in to test. So you'd often get that people basically test for these ethnicity estimates that's advertised. But the goal of the ethnicity estimates is to identify where your DNA was found 500 to 1,000 years ago. So not that recent. But reference DNA is not available for all populations 500 to 1,000 years ago. Therefore, your DNA is compared to a reference population or panels. These reference populations consist of DNA of people who can, with a great deal of confidence, say that all 8 of their great-grandparents were from a very specific location, which means that their DNA is highly characteristic of the region. Now, this is where the issue comes in. Each testing company uses their own panel, which gets expanded and refined over time. So your estimates will therefore change over time. Your ethnicity estimates of the different companies can be vastly different because each uses their own reference panel. This is not 100% exact science, but it gets refined and more accurate as more people from our South African population test. So you'll often get someone complaining that DNA is not accurate, and that is because they've seen different ethnicity estimates from the different companies. So they will say DNA is not accurate. The problem is the ethnicity estimates, they are what they are, estimates, but our cousin matches are accurate. So we always try to make people understand that ethnicity estimates should not be your main reason for doing a DNA, or if you're doing it for genealogical reasons, do not focus on your ethnicity estimates too much. They are only estimates. The interesting thing of DNA is actually the cousin matches. So this is what a cousin match list look like. And as I said, the accuracy, a very high level of accuracy for parent-child relationships. This is if I say the accuracy, it's about what is listed there as an estimated relationship. It's a very high level of accuracy for parent-child relationships and relationships up to the second cousin level. Even for us in an endogenous endogamous population, still up to second cousin level is accurate. So if you go beyond that estimate relationship might be something else, but that person is still related to you. So it's accurate. The list of matches, you only get the list of matches from other people who are in this company's database. So they've either tested or they've uploaded. So you do not see matches from other companies unless people have deliberately uploaded their DNA from other companies to this company's database. With the match list, your most recent common ancestor will only be as far back as 5 to 7 generations, so third to fifth cousins, or third to fifth great-grandparents. There's no indication whether a match is maternal or paternal unless you've tested a known parent, half-sibling, cousin, aunt, or uncle. Then you might be able to determine which side they're on. Ancestry does divide between a parent 1 and a parent 2, for example, but you have to decide which one is parent 1 and parent 2. Then raw DNA data can be uploaded to other databases to match more people. So where do we test? So I'm going to cover the big companies. I am not covering every single one because it is not really worth doing that. These are the most common ones for South Africans to use. The first one is Ancestry. They do an autosomal DNA test only. It's a saliva test. They shipped to South Africa for a short time in 2023, but that has stopped because of the issues with customs. Your raw data can be uploaded to GETmatch, MyHeritage, and FamilyTree DNA for comparison, but they do not allow uploads from other databases into theirs. MyHeritage is the other one, ATDNA only. It's a cheek swab, so it's a bit easier, and the tests don't fail as often. They ship to South Africa. The raw data can be uploaded to FamilyTree DNA and GETmatch, and they accept uploads from other companies. Then FamilyTree DNA, they've got autosomal DNA, they've got Y-DNA, and they've got mtDNA. They have a cheek swab. Your DNA is stored and can be reused for further tests. So you save on shipping costs and the effort of getting a test to you and back. You still pay for it, but the shipping costs, you save that. They ship to South Africa. Their raw data can be uploaded to MyHeritage and GETmatch, and they accept downloads from, uploads from other companies. Before I move on, Ancestry. So because of the problem with customs, they've picked up on Ancestry, and they're blocking. So Ancestry has stopped sending. They just couldn't get the test through anymore. It seems like MyHeritage and FamilyTree DNA are going through from time to time. So it seems like it's a little bit easier. But when you join our DNA Facebook, using DNA for Genealogy South Africa Facebook group, you can ask the question there if someone is traveling from overseas to bring you a kit. And in that case, you can ask them to bring you an Ancestry kit. Or I know Anna-Marie also sometimes have empty, just clear the actual kits there that you can register for FamilyTree DNA. So it's worth joining our group to figure out if someone has got something or someone is coming over and can bring you a test. So definitely for the most up-to-date. And if anything changes around these mailing back and forth, you will get information on our Facebook page. I'm going to briefly mention 23andMe. The problem with 23andMe is that I do not test South Africans. So if they pick up that you are from South Africa, whether you've sent it back from South Africa or you've mentioned somewhere that you're from South Africa, they will not do your test. They are not allowed to do your test. They get approval in the different countries, and they do not test South Africans. They were in the news recently for data breaches, and they're suffering currently as a company. So at the moment, I think I will not ever do a test with them. If you go to the trouble to try and find a test from overseas, rather do the Ancestry. Their database of South Africans are much smaller. Not many South Africans have tested with them. Yes, so I haven't covered living DNA, and I haven't covered South African testing companies like Mediclinic. I can just say beware of companies who call their test Ancestry test. Make sure it's the Ancestry company's test you're buying. And the difference between the testing companies in South Africa versus the 4 top international ones is that any test available in South Africa only give you ethnicity estimates, and they are very expensive. They do not have databases of matches, and their raw data cannot be uploaded to the big databases that I've mentioned here. You will therefore not be able to use these test results for genealogy. The international ones give ethnicity estimates and cousin matches. And that's a list of thousands of people you relate to. Now, I have to clarify, Mediclinic does upload all tests to GETmatch. The problem is you have to contact them to take over your test yourself. But GETmatch, the GETmatch database is still quite small. So compared to the other companies like Family Tree DNA and MyHeritage, and you cannot upload your Mediclinic test there. Mediclinic seems to be a little bit more expensive as well than the overseas tests. You can often get the test from overseas, the MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA and even Ancestry tests for much cheaper than the Mediclinic test. So all in all, it is not the best value for money. And even though I wish we could have a company in South Africa who would test, I mean, I'd love that. It's probably never going to happen because of the fact that a lot of money is needed to keep these chipsets up to date and to do everything around that. So I mean, it would have been in a perfect world, we would have had a lab there that was comparable to the overseas companies, but it is just not going to happen. I think at this stage, the thing that will be more helpful is if we have a point where we can buy these kits from the international companies in South Africa. That'll make life a lot easier. So distributing centers would be helpful, but unfortunately, there's nothing like that available at the moment. So how do I decide where to test or who to test? For autosomal DNA testing, test the oldest generation first, your parents, grandparents, if they're still around, or aunts and uncles. That is if you have parents, test both. If you have one parent, test yourself and one parent, or test an uncle. I, for example, have never tested my dad. I always meant to, and he was quite excited about it, but he passed away in a freak accident while he was still very healthy and in his early 70s. So I unfortunately haven't tested him at that stage. I've tested my mum and a paternal aunt instead of my dad. So where do you test? Who do you use? It depends on your reasons, your time frame, costs for you, and your location. Also look at the privacy statements as well as the level of privacy settings available in each company. And in the end, Ancestry should be your first choice if you can get a test to you. I've got a little bit of a diagram about how to make that decision. So you start off by asking yourself, do I want to do an autosomal test? That's usually yes. But if it's no, the only option is to use a Y-DNA and an mtDNA test at Family Tree DNA. If your answer is yes for an autosomal test, you have to ask yourself the question, is this an elderly person and the saliva test may be a problem? Or you may want to do more tests in future. If that's yes, then you test at Family Tree DNA and upload to others. If it's not, and if it's yourself, test at Ancestry and upload to others. Then the last thing is, please join our Facebook group. It's been created out of the South African Genealogy Facebook group after we got complaints of too many DNA questions, and it's also easier to keep things together there. There's answers to join. Please answer those questions to join. There's automatic decline if people don't answer all the questions. Also read through the pinned posts and announcements or the featured section for this group and for all groups actually. You will find the most up-to-date information in our group. And like I've said, you may be able to source a kit and you will get help mailing it back from South Africa. Also lurk a bit and do searches on what other people have asked before. And please use real names. Names and surnames are important in genealogy. So, and we share a lot of personal things on that group, or, you know, it's your DNA. So it gets to a personal family level. And so we do not accept profiles without proper names. Okay, it's question time. So I am going to stop sharing. So Helmi, could you ask the question, could I from slave ancestry also do a DNA test? So can you just explain to me what you mean here, because what the DNA, it tests your DNA and shows you other people you match to. So maybe just clarify a little bit.
Sorry, excuse me. Good morning to you. In that the Malay population in Cape Town, especially the Malay population, have been ostracized or marginalized for so long. There hasn't been a real, what do you call it, register of who is who in the Cape Malay community, because they married, intermarried also with the Dutch and also with the British at the Cape. So it's a bit hazy, because nobody wants to claim that they are of British ancestry or Dutch ancestry. So how will they do that and then bring to the Europeans that were here, like the British and the Dutch and the Germans?
Yes. So even though I'm going to go into the Y-DNA tests later, I'll give you an example because it's close to home. My husband, he, Farrell, you know, it was always, what's an Irish surname, you know, so the issue was always that we didn't know a lot about his family history past his grandfather. His grandfather and his grandfather's sister didn't want to talk about their ancestry, but they were Farrell. They had a lot of stories about Europe and, you know, but nothing added up in my mind. So I started digging, and actually through the DNA tests, the Y-DNA test, we managed to determine that my husband's not from Irish ancestry. He's from, most of his matches is in, or the haplogroup that was assigned to him is from India, Sri Lanka. So his Farrells were not Farrells. So eventually because we knew, okay, we were onto something, we were able to solve that his grandfather, his great-grandfather was born a Pedro in South Africa, and his mother remarried, his great-grandfather's mother remarried, and the kids became Farrells. So that was a marriage into the British, and you know that, so they changed the surname of the kids when she married Farrell from Pedro to Farrell. So I myself I just wish more people from that ancestry would test, because I'm still looking for his link to any of the current Pedros in South Africa, if you know what I mean. Because we would be able to see it if anyone tests. It will show that he's closely related to them. So yes, there's various tests to determine, and your ethnicity estimates will give you, if your grandparents were from that area, it will show a 25% from, say, India or something like that. And especially in Ancestry, they're refining it because they've got a bigger database. It's refined better. So I found that my husband's ethnicity from estimates from India and those areas are picking up. It's every refinement, there's a bigger percentage. And in the beginning, they just said almost like somewhere in the east. Now it is more refined into which country, and it's picking up. It went from 2% to 4% to 5%. So my short answer is yes. You will be able to see, and you will be able to link up to, depending on how many generations ago it is, but you will be able to see it.
Thank you.
Were you ever able to determine somebody from India in a woman's DNA, the mitochondrial? Because I've got an ancestor from Nagapatman, and I'd love to pick her up, but there are so many generations in between. I'm doubtful. Has anybody ever been able to find that?
So you haven't done an mtDNA, have you?
No, not yet.
So it will. So your mtDNA,
Oh.
if it,
Oh.
but this is if it's mtDNA. So we'll talk about mtDNA later. mtDNA is your mother's line. So
Yeah.
if that one you're looking for is mother all the way, like female line, you will be able to pick it up and enter DNA.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, I might have missed this, but to start off with, how many people need to test? Is it 2? Yourself and somebody else from your family?
No. So whenever you test, you will get a list of matches. So if any of your second cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins have tested, they will show up as matches for you. So you get a list of people who match you. So it depends on who else in your family tree, and it just depends on how many people have tested. So most of us have thousands of matches. So you have so many, and in order to sort them out, it is easier if you have tested a family member, especially a mother or a father or a half sibling, because that just means you can divide. People who match you and your mother is on your mother's side. People who match you and your father is on your father's side. People who match your father and not your mother. So that's easier to sort your matches out. The same with a half sibling. Everyone who matches you and your half sibling is obviously on that side of your parent. So the parent you share. So most people only test themselves, but the only reason you would test someone else is if you want to sort out your matches. In my case, I already had second cousins who have tested, so it wasn't that hard for me to divide most of my matches. But when you get to your smaller matches, it gets harder and harder. So it's just helpful if you have someone else close to you have tested. Does it make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
I want to know, is it worth a while to do overseas testing on the basis of how representative are these databases of all the 4 top overseas companies in terms of Southeast Asia and the Far East? Um, it
So
just in terms of the presence and participation from that side across the Indian Ocean.
yes. So what is happening here is that they do not have to have testers in their database from those countries. So what they have is some of it is reference populations so they've created these reference populations. So it's not necessarily people who have tested. It is either, some of it is DNA that they've gotten by, because it's old companies as well. They might have collected these DNA in a different way. The Genographic Project, for example, that's not in existence anymore. They, for example, collected a lot of DNA in the Eastern company areas. But all the companies have Southeastern in their reference panels. So I feel people might have a different experience than I have, but I feel like with Ancestry, it's with our link to the Pedros, with my husband's link to the Pedros, I can see that it gets refined and refined and refined. So you will definitely get South Asian in your ethnicity estimates.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a cousin whose daughter has done a DNA test. I'm not sure with who she did it. She doesn't have a family tree. She's on mine. But if she did an Ancestry DNA test, can I, although I didn't request it, take her information and log it onto Ancestry to see where she fits in? Or can I only log on the Ancestry tests or DNA tests that I have done for my family?
So what happens is in some of the databases like Ancestry, if she's done it at Ancestry, for example, she can invite you if she's willing to as a manager of her DNA. So if she's willing to give you control of her profile, she still holds control, but there's different levels of management rights that she can give you. Then you can use her test. If the same with MyHeritage, she could assign the test you as one of her managers of her test, which then means you can use it as in all the different other things you can do. You can do that with her test. So it all depends if she's willing to give you rights to that test. And often they will, because they don't know much about what to do with these tests. So I think if you can approach her and ask her that question, you can do that if it's in one of those companies, especially Ancestry and MyHeritage. Family Tree DNA doesn't have a proper tree system, so it might be a little bit harder, but you can always, if you can get her DNA and upload it to some of the others, you can use it as well.
Okay, thank you.
This session will all be about, I've received my results, so what now? So I'll touch again on the DNA basics, just in case people weren't here in the first session, and also to give more context about where I'm moving towards. And I will talk about MyHeritage. We'll talk about family tree DNA, about Ancestry. I'll show a quick analysis of matches. I've also, the last part I've added because I had questions in previous sessions about how do I contact my matches, and I'll give an example as well. And also then I'll talk about uploading to other databases. So some of these things I've touched on before, and this is an expansion of that. So DNA basics, again, we are born with 23 pairs of chromosomes, 22 autosomal and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. They are contained in every cell nucleus. We will look at the X chromosome as well in this session. Mitochondrial, I'll just mention why in the process as well, but mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA, is not located in the cell nucleus. It is in the mitochondria, and we will cover that in a next session. So each chromosome pair came 50% from one parent and 50% from the other parent. So our DNA test alone cannot be used to determine which of the DNA comes from the mother side and which from the father side. When we pass our DNA, when we ourselves pass our DNA onto our children, we pass recombined DNA on, and that mix is arbitrary. So each child gets a different mix. Only identical twins get the exact same mix from each parent, and some testing companies now show a parent 1 and parent 2 on their list of matches, but definitely not mother, father, paternal, maternal. You will only see on your ATDNA at most a parent 1 and parent 2. So when we look at the generations, so your parents, you share 50% of DNA with your parents, 25% with your grandparents, 12.5% with your great grandparents, 6.25% with every great great grandparent, and 3.125% with the great great grandparents. This diagram just shows how arbitrary this is. If you look at the children at the bottom, they share different mix of each parent. It's never the exact same mix unless it is identical twin. So I just want to mention recombination. So there's a process called meiosis, and it creates gametes. Gametes are the eggs and the sperm cells. So the resulting gametes have 23 new chromosomes. So gametes, so the egg and the sperm cells have 23 new chromosomes, but it's just one member from the 23 pairs. So it's not 2, it's 1. And that one pair represents a unique combination of the original 2 chromosomes that the parent had. So during meiosis, genetic information is exchanged between the maternal and paternal inherited copies of each of the chromosomes in order to create recombination of genes. This process of genetic recombination helps to increase the genetic variability within a species, and it allows for the transmission of virtually limitless combination of genes from parent to offspring. So your parent in the egg and sperm cell has a recombination 1 chromosome coming from a recombination of their paternal and their maternal chromosomes. Then I need to touch on terminology. When we talk about segments, we talk about we mean pieces of DNA. So matching DNA segments are identical pieces of DNA shared between 2 people. These identical DNA segments are located on specific locations on each chromosome. On the right-hand side, I've got a chromosome browser there, which shows the segments in blue and the positions they are on each of the chromosomes. The screenshot only shows 9 of the 22 ATDNA chromosomes. Then centimorgans. Centimorgans is a unit of measurement. It is not anything like the physical units we use in everyday life. So we call it a length, but it's not actually a length. It's about the repetition of what is in that segment. But the more centimorgans you share with someone, the more closely you're related. When you start to look at individual segments, which we do when we start to delve deeper into solving mysteries and things like that, you need to steer away from single segments that are less than 7 centimorgans, as they are often false positives. The other thing to note is that longer segments, often combined with additional smaller segments, indicate a more recent relationship between you and your genetic matches. So we will later on talk more about the centimorgans, but it comes down to if you share 100 centimorgans with one and 100 with another person, if person A, you share longer segments, if your 100 is made up of longer segments, you've got a closer relationship. But we'll touch on that again later. Now, we haven't talked about xDNA up to now. We've just talked about the rest of the ATDNA or the ATDNA. So, as I've said before, all these, the ATDNA as well as the X and Y chromosomes are located in the cell nucleus. X is included in standard autosomal DNA tests, but not always shown. Y usually is not, even though some companies include a male test as haplogroup assignments at the moment. But you can see your X matches by uploading to Family Tree DNA in GETmatch, where you can clearly see if that person is an X match for you. Why is the X match important? If you look at female xDNA inheritance, a female gets one X from each parent. The mother's is a recombination of her two parents. And if you look at the way xDNA is transmitted, you will see that on the female side, you can exclude some ancestors if you look at X match. So if you look at an X match and you are a female, the chart on the left-hand side, I've got a female at the bottom. If she would do a DNA test and she's an X match with someone, that match of hers will only be in the colored blocks, in the lines in the colored blocks. Now, this even gets more important when you look at a male, because a male gets an exact copy of only his mother's DNA, xDNA. So an X match for a male is definitely on their mother's side. So if a male has got an X, they can X match, that match is definitely on the mother's side, and they can ignore their father's side. But something to remember with X matches is not an X match doesn't mean anything. You can only look at X matches from the point of view they are an X match. So this is how they can fit into my tree. If it's not an X match, it can still be on any side. The problem is people often think, okay, this is not, if they look at the male's DNA, okay, this is not an X match, it must be on the father's side, but not an X match says nothing. It is only when it is an X match that you can say something about it. It is just keep it in mind if you ever use the X match to determine how someone is related to you. So now let's look at the different companies and see what they give you when you get your results. So MyHeritage will show you some of the terminology has the screens still look the same in MyHeritage, but some of the terminology has changed a little bit. So in MyHeritage, you get a list of people that match you with their names, and there's a link to click on to contact them. But then you'll get probable relationships details. The first one, for example, say second cousins to second cousin once removed. So this part is an analysis of the DNA that you share with this DNA match. And if you click on the little question mark there, it actually comes up with a whole range of possible relationships. So it just shows you the basic, but you can see the person's possible relationship to you. Then next to it, you get the DNA match quality. So this is where we see exactly how much DNA we share with someone. So in the second match, for example, I share 152.7 centimorgans with this person. There's 10 shared segments, and the largest segment is 29. So I've mentioned before the longer segment. So if you look at my top match or the match at the top and the second match, you'll see that the largest segment for the top one is 59.4 centimorgans, and the bottom one, the largest segment, is 29.9. So even though there's only a small difference of 10 centimorgans in the amount I share with them, the fact that I share with the top one 59.4 indicates that that is probably a much closer relationship than the one at the bottom. They will probably not be at the same level. Then on the far right, you get some buttons that review your DNA match and view tree. So review DNA match shows, when you click on review DNA match, it shows your shared ethnicity with this person, because this is your list. So when you click on review DNA match, you'll get a list of people you share in common with this person. So you match them, and that this person that you've clicked, the button you've clicked on, that person also share that same matches. And we'll go into more detail on that as well later. And then right at the bottom, there's sometimes extra information that appears depending on how much you have provided MyHeritage with. If you've got a tree and the person who's got a tree, MyHeritage often find a link between your tree. So that part has basically got nothing really to do with your DNA. It is more between your trees. So they see, okay, this person is a match for you, but we've also found a link between you and this person through the tree system. So this is MyHeritage. On Family Tree DNA, they have buckets for paternal and maternal matches, but the only way to do that is to indicate that some of your matches are paternal or maternal. So because I have my mother's DNA and my paternal aunt, I was able to create these two buckets. The buckets are done automatically by the fact that I gave Family Tree DNA an indication of, this is a big match for me, a close match for me on my mum's side, my mum herself, and this is a close match on my dad's side, my paternal aunt. So because I've given that indication, Family Tree DNA is able to drop my matches into buckets. I still have matches on both sides, thanks to endogamy, but it means that some of my matches were divided into different buckets. They have a button here for you to check people you have in common with that person and people not in common. In order to use that, you click the tick boxes on the left-hand side, click one person, say I want to see which matches are in common with that person and which matches are not in common. So here we get down to the point of the X match. So on Family Tree DNA, you can see whether someone is an X match for you. This is my test, but if this was, for example, my husband's test, and I see that X match, I know this will be on his mother's side. The next match say no X match, it says nothing. It can tell me nothing. But every X match for a male tells me it's on his mother's side. When you look at XDNA, if you've got a match of less than 10 centimorgans in the X match, it's probably inaccurate. It is better to concentrate on the above 10 centimorgan X matches. X fan chart I had in the previous slide, you can use that to determine where in the tree this first person fits in if they are an X match. When you use the buttons at the side, you can also look at the chromosome browser by clicking on in common with, and we will get to that as well later. Okay, so Ancestry. So unfortunately, Ancestry has taken away some features that were available to people who have previously tested. So at the moment, the information you get your matches, you get ethnicity estimates, but you are quite limited to what else you can do in Ancestry. But I always say there's MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA. You can upload there, and if you have a very good match on Ancestry that's not yet on family tree DNA, you can contact the person and ask, can you please upload to MyHeritage so that we can try and work out this relationship? So, you know, it's still good to test with Ancestry because you cannot upload your DNA to their database. You have to test with them to be in their database. So if you can test with them, and just use the other tools on in the other databases. So they have, if you take out a subscription, you get some extra things, but not everything. But then they have a Pro Tools subscription that you can do an extra monthly payment where you get access to all the tools. So the parental sites now, whether it says maternal or paternal, so that when you start off, it says parent 1, parent 2, but only if you have a subscription now. This is something that was previously available to everyone. This is now just under a subscription. So when Ancestry assign people to your match list, they will tell you maternal side, paternal side, unassigned, or both. In my case, because I could assign a maternal side and a paternal side from my matches, I could clearly see who was on my mother's side and who was on my father's side. I assigned those people, and then in the next round of refinement, Ancestry divided mine into paternal and maternal, even though otherwise it would have shown only parent 1 and parent 2 because I have a subscription. So what do we do? How do we do a quick analysis of our matches? The one thing I want to stress is do not expect your own surname in your list of matches. Don't specifically focus on surnames. I have more than 1,000 matches on Ancestry, and the closest match with my maiden name, which is Van Wyk, which is not that uncommon in South Africa. My closest match with my maiden name is a 6th cousin on my mother's side, not even on my father's side. So even though everything else is proven and my father is my father, so it is important to know, when you get your results back and you have nothing with your maiden name or with your surname, if you're a male, don't be shocked. It is very common not to have something as matches with your own surname. Because remember, we've got 2 parents with 2 different surnames. Grandparents, we've got 4 surnames. Great-grandparents, we've got 8 surnames. Great-great-grandparents, we've got 16 surnames. And every single person you match have the same thing. By great-great-grandparents, they have 16 surnames. So often our matches we will get in these databases are second cousins or above. So you've got 8 surnames. That person has got 8 surnames. Don't expect a lot of matches with your own surname, if any at all. So it's again important to know that if you have tested that family tree DNA or uploaded there, keep X matches in mind when you look at it, and create yourself a fan chart like the one I've created, and you can watch this back afterwards to see what they look like. But it's also you can do a Google search for XDNA fan charts, and you can see exactly how they should be done. Look for shared matches with known family members, especially those that are a little bit further off. For example, a cousin, if you've got a cousin, you know exactly which grandparents that person links to, and the matches you share with that person will usually be then in that line. And also, I often look at matches who do have trees first. Having said that, I myself do not have a big presence for myself, so you will not find me. I am one of those people who prefer people to contact me so that I can work with them. So, you know, by all means, contact the person and ask for a tree. But it makes life a little bit easier when someone has a tree available straight there on MyHeritage, or family tree DNA links to MyHeritage now as well, or on Ancestry. Now, the next slide, I'm going to talk about contacting your matches. So the moment you get your matches, you're starting to wonder, how am I related to this person? I don't know this person. How am I related? So in the next slide, I will start to look at some tools. But the important thing before you contact your matches, please do some homework. I get so many messages of people you can see it's just a copy of one message they're sending to everyone. And I might go back and say, you give me more information if I feel like it, or if it's a close enough match. But otherwise, it is just irritating to get these messages, and you can see the person is just sending a email out to, or a message out to everyone. So my advice is use a tool such as Shared CM Project in the next slide to work out what your possible relationships are to each match. So even though MyHeritage and all these companies will show you possible relationships, something like Shared CM Project is often a little bit more accurate. Then also, before you start contacting people, please only concentrate on third cousins and closer, or if you're busy trying to solve something, focus on a group of shared matches. Only contact a few people at a time. And before you do the contacting, make screenshots of any tree and shared matches. If you can see shared matches, please make screenshots, because often if people are contacted, they get scared and they might switch their sharing off and you can't see what you could see before. So if you can see any extra information, please make screenshots before you start contacting people. Then, as I've said before, write a personal message with enough information. Do not send the same message to all your matches. It's very easy to pick up on that, to see that people have not actually written you a personal message. When you contact people, ask for what you realistically need. Do not don't ask blindly, I want your tree. Where's your tree? Can I see your tree? Ask specifically what you need or realistically need. This means that if someone is a third cousin of you do not need the parents' names. So if you contact me and you're a third cousin for me and ask me for my parents' names, it's unnecessary. So ask for great grandparents, or so when you contact the person specifically, ask them for what you need on that level. Also, be prepared then to share part of your own tree. So consider creating profiles on Family Search for your great-grandparents and further back if you can, if their profiles don't already exist, because Family Tree, the Family Search is a global tree, one global tree. So, and the same with Geni. So we all work together on one tree there. It means that you're not creating your own tree in Family Search or your own tree in Geni. It's a tree that anyone can edit and work on. So the frustration it sometimes adds to my life, especially years before Family Search, the Family Search tree, I worked a lot on Geni, but the stress it caused me, everyone changing trees all the time that they shouldn't change. I decided, well, this is it. I'm just keeping a basic tree there, and even if someone changes it, then they change it. So but it is good. So I have a presence on Geni and Family Search, so I can advise people. These are my great grandparents, for example, if they want to look at my tree. In the next example, this is the Shared CM project that I was telling you about as part of your research you do before you contact your matches. You can simply use the Shared CM project to enter the quantity of DNA you share with someone, and it'll give you a range of relationships. What it will do is it will also give you the probability. This is what makes it a little bit better than some of the others. It's harder to get that information. You can by clicking in a lot of places, but here you can clearly see there's a 51% chance of this set of relationship, or a 38% chance of this set of relationships. It's only 7%, and you go down to 4%. So when I contact my matches, I will use the top one and say probably, or a little bit further, but this is probably how we are related. And so this is part of doing your homework first. This makes it look more realistic for you to know if you get a six cousin to say that your DNA is shared sixth cousin or further, or fourth cousin or something, you know it's realistically not really worth it contacting that person unless you do not have bigger matches. So now I'm going to give you an example of a letter, a message you can send to someone. It is important to note that this message is for second to third cousins, not for closer relationship. I'll touch a little bit on closer relationships. But if you've got second or third cousins and you want to contact the person, you start with dear and put their name in there. And then you mention which test. I'm related to the test of so-and-so. So some people have multiple kids linked to their account on MyHeritage, Family Tree, DNA, and JetMatch. I, for example, have 8 of my own family kids that I look after. So if you just contact me and say I'm a match, I'm contacting you because I want to work out how we match. I have no idea which kid you're talking about. So it means you're sending me off to do the homework to check, but which kid? Now I have to go through my kids, look for this person, see where the match is. So make sure you tell that person which kid match you. Then you say something like, I would love to work out how we are connected and was wondering if you're willing to share the details of your second great-grandparents or great-grandparents with me. So for second, like I've said before, for second cousins and further away, you only basically need great-grandparents and further back. You don't need closer. So there's no need to just ask in general for a tree or for parents' names or something like that. As I've said, this message is for contacting matches second to third cousin. If you get a match that is closer, that is a cousin or something like a half sibling or a half uncle, it is important to be careful with how you contact this person because it could be sensitive. There might be something going on, and especially a half brother or a half sister. And people have, in some cases, ignored my advice and then lost all contact with this person by going in too full on in the beginning. So if you contact someone and they're very close to you, you have no idea how involved that person is in DNA, how much they know, how much. So jumping in straight away might cause stress and anxiety. It is best, because some people might have just done the test for ethnicity estimates and they would have no idea how to read this. So if it's someone really close, start off by saying something like, I've done my DNA test and I see we're closely related. Do you mind working with me so we can figure out what's going on here and how we are related? Do not jump in and say, hi, I see I've got a new half brother, or I've got a half sister, or I got a new uncle, or it can chase people away. The other problem is, so it's not lying, but don't jump in, just make the connection with the person and start talking first. But on the other hand, if it's a further match, second to third cousin, give the details, because otherwise as well, they get a fright. If you don't say your second or third cousin, they might get a fright and think you're closer. So be careful with close matches, how you contact them. And this example of a letter is a good one for second to third cousin matches. Okay, so let's look at uploading to other databases. So the reason we would upload is to get more matches, because you're only matched against the people in that database. The way the uploads are only for autosomal DNA. This is what when I'm talking about these companies, this is for autosomal. I'll give you some uploads to other companies later in my last slide. But you look for download DNA. I'm not going to give you the exact spots where it is, because you can find it with the Google search, or you can find it in the company where you've tested. The problem is these things change. So if I tell you now this exact steps how to do it, it might change in a few weeks or something. So the best to do is to look for download DNA from the account of the company you have tested at, or do it, for example, you've tested at Ancestry, do a search, a Google search, I want to download my DNA from Ancestry, then you'll get the steps. On the other hand, the company, the database you want to upload to, you look for upload DNA. The file you download with your raw DNA is a zip file. Do not unzip this file before you upload it. You just upload it in that format. Okay, so what can we do? So if we've tested at Ancestry, 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, or MyHeritage, we can upload our test results to Family Tree DNA, MyHeritage, and JetMatch. Of course, if you've tested with Family Tree DNA, you're not going to upload to Family Tree DNA, but you're going to upload to the other two. If you tested at MyHeritage, you're not going to upload to MyHeritage, you're going to upload to Family Tree DNA and JetMatch. Family Tree DNA had 1 account per test, and you can pay, I think it's $19 US once off for tools, and sometimes there's a $10 special. You can contact your matches, you can see your matches and contact them for free. On MyHeritage, multiple kits can be uploaded to the same account. So if you have an account and you want to upload, you've tested everyone at Ancestry, that's what I've done. Tested a few people at Ancestry, they all uploaded to my MyHeritage account. And you can, in MyHeritage, you can share your test with someone else to manage. The same with Ancestry, but I'm now talking about after upload. MyHeritage is the option of a $29 once-off fee for tools, for the extra tools, but they don't have that one-off fee if you've tested with them. This is to encourage people to upload to their database. So if you upload, so anytime you upload, you can always see the matches and contact them, and you can contact them for free. But when you pay when you've uploaded to MyHeritage and you pay the extra fee, you get Chromosome Browser, you get a variety of extra tools if you pay the once-off fee. So that is why if you do not test at Ancestry and upload to MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA, in the end, I think all in all, it's better to test at Family Tree DNA, use that DNA, and upload it to MyHeritage. Because it means you can pay a once-off fee to get access to the tools, and it just makes more sense. It's more cost effective, because if you test with MyHeritage, you can still upload to Family Tree DNA and JetMatch, but you need a subscription to the tools. So I hope this makes sense. JetMatch is a standalone database, and you can upload multiple kits can be uploaded to the same account. They've got tier 1 advanced tools for $10 per month, but the basic tools are for free. So the next slide, I'll show you a little bit of JetMatch. So for JetMatch, you can upload your DNA from any other database you've any other of the companies you've tested with. So unfortunately, JetMatch is not as big as we would like it to be. We would prefer everyone to upload to JetMatch, but at the moment it isn't that big. So I'd say, still upload to MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA, but also JetMatch. The reason why you would upload, especially if you're looking for cousins, the reason you would upload to every database is because not everyone knows about these uploads. So you only see people who know about the uploads or who have tested at these companies. So it's better to put it out everywhere. On JetMatch, matches are listed with email addresses. Like I said, you can use JetMatch free tools and pay for the tier 1 tools. We've got an Ancestor project through our Facebook page. It's very technical, down to segment analysis, that project, if you want to use it, but you can join our project. And there's lots of tutorials on JetMatch, so look out for the links to tutorials on their website. The steps are: you create a JetMatch account, you download your raw DNA data from a testing company in the zip file, and you upload it to JetMatch. I can mention Mediclinic, the South African test company again here. Mediclinic, you had to ask them for your DNA file and you could upload it to JetMatch. But because the DNA test is not of a high quality and a high standard, you cannot upload it to any of the other databases. But you can at least to JetMatch. And then at one stage, they started to upload everyone's test. Everyone who tested with them, they uploaded to JetMatch and gave people the option. And so at first they only did it, upload everything, and gave people a match list. I then contacted JetMatch and I said to them, there's one account that's uploading massive emails of DNA tests. And basically it means that admin person can look at all of our DNA, all of the matches. Do they know that Mediclinic is doing this, using their database to provide matches to their testers? So I I wasn't sure what the payment structure was and things like that. So I contacted JetMatch and I made them aware of it. They weren't all that happy about it. So they contacted Mediclinic and they had a discussion with them. They in the end decided that Mediclinic isn't charging extra for these matches, so it's fine. But they forced Mediclinic to now give the option of people to take over their own tests. So what they do is they'll with the matches, they'll tell the person about JetMatch and say, you can take over your account. Unfortunately, most people don't. So now we're sitting with all these matches. We can see on JetMatch with the Mediclinic address, and Mediclinic doesn't react on those emails. So it's useless for any of us doing genealogy. So unfortunately, yeah, it's a bit of an issue. But yeah, like I've said, I still wish it was better in South Africa, but it isn't, unfortunately. So it is what it is. Okay, that's JetMatch. I'm going to just quickly tell you about a few other databases. So we've got Promethease, which is a health and medical information database. You can upload your DNA there for a small fee, and it compares your DNA. So this is not genealogy. This is just for fun, some extra fun. You can look at your health and medical information, and they compare your DNA markers to research done worldwide, and it gives you an indication of how your DNA may be linked to various research findings. It's all medical. It is not a diagnostic tool to tell you what disease you have. And from their website, I can quote, Promethease is a literature retrieval system that builds a personal DNA report based on connecting a file of DNA genotypes to the specific findings cited in SNPedia. So it's basically a literature retrieval, looking at all research that has been done. Please read the when you sign on to the database, or when you log in, there's a lot of boxes to tick. Read specifically through them so that you understand what this information is and what it is not. It's very interesting to look at, though. Genome Link is another one. They also have health information, but they have trades for free, 100 trades. So it'll tell you something about your eye color or something about your, well, there's a few, there's quite a few. There's like 100 trades you can get for free. Then if you pay for a subscription, you get hundreds more. I think there's 359, and they add to that often. So that is just some things to play around with your DNA that makes it a little bit, yes, some interesting things to do.
Yes, I just want to, is it possible once someone has found out some information about the DNA to say, please don't share it? And so it's sort of lost to the database.
Yes, you can hide it. The best way that this is part of why I have said before deciding to, if you think something like that might come up, it's good to investigate all the different testing companies to see what the privacy settings are in there, because some of them, I'm not on top of the detail of it, because I'm like one of those people who everything is open there from my end. So yes, there's different privacy settings, and you may be able to hide your DNA test. I think most companies do have, unfortunately, for some of them, if you hide your own test, you can't see others, which is just sort of fair. You know, if you hide yourself, you can also not see other matches. So, but at least you can see your ethnicity results and things like that. So yes, there is the option.
Yeah, I'm more thinking it from the other point of view. If somebody else might decide to hide these, which makes my search more difficult.
Oh yes, that could happen, and it especially happens, like I've said before, if say there's a new match and they suddenly see you as a very close match and you haven't logged on yet to see it, They could be hiding because they don't want to make contact. So they don't want you to make contact. Say a half sister or half brother turns up, and they don't want to know more. They could straight away hide it or block you or something, and then you can't see it. It happens more often with the wrong contact. If you contact them in the wrong way, they get scared and decide to block you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for an interesting meeting. I don't have the time to go through all the analysis myself. Can I pay somebody to do it for me? And if so, is there somebody you could recommend?
It depends on what you need. So just basic analysis of what's going on. You are probably going to pay quite a bit for it. There are, however, people who in America they call them search angels, but yeah, there's a few of us on the Facebook page that if it's a biological father, a specific search, if you want to find something specific out about a mystery or something, there are some of us who will do it for free. I think if you start paying people, it becomes almost it's unaffordable because it takes forever. It takes a long time to do. So many of us do it for the love of it, to help people solve biological searches. And if you ask that on the Facebook group, to say that you've got a search, someone might pick it up. I know Anna Marie specifically works with a lot. I work at any one time, I will work at 4 to 5 at a time. So often I would be not in a position to take any more, but you do get people who are willing to help you if you post your question there.
Thank you very much. In this case, it's a specific brick wall that we've been struggling for 30 years with. So it's a 4 times grandfather we're looking for.
Okay, yeah, that becomes extremely hard because it's too far away. So the further away it is, the smaller your matches will be, the harder it will be. So yeah, it all depends on your search. You can ask the question there and someone might jump in and just start looking for you, you know, and help you on the way or something like that. We usually prefer people to work with us to help building trees and things like that, but I'll get to that as well in the next session.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to know, I've researched up till 4 generations before, so my question was actually incorrect. I know my family members up till the 4th generation. How do I investigate if I want to go further back? Could you let me know?
Yeah, so have you done a DNA test?
No, not yet.
Okay. So what will happen is when you do a DNA test, you will probably get people who are further away than that will match you. So what you would do in this case is when you get your results, your DNA results, you'll get a list of people. You will try and place those people, work with them to place them in your current tree that you already have. And the ones that are left over that are not currently in your tree would probably be further away. So you can work with them then and hopefully, you know, build their tree and maybe they have more. So it's all a question of collaboration, of working with your matches to work your tree further back, because you will get matches that's a little bit further than 4 generations.
Thank you so much.
The third session, I will look at some extra tests. Up to now, we've looked mostly at the autosomal DNA and the X that is included in that. In this session, I'll look at some extra tools. So first thing, I'll cover some tools. I'll look at what triangulation is. We'll look a little bit at endogamy, and we'll look at extra DNA tests. Basic tools, back to the XDNA inheritance fan charts. Once again, this is a handy tool if we have X matches to help us distinguish between to ignore branches or to if the person is an X match for us. More handy when it's a male that is tested, less so when it's a female. So the one tool that I use continuously, once again, it's a shared CM project that gives me a good idea of where my match is related to me, what our relationship can possibly be, and because we get in on shared CM project proper probabilities, it's a good tool to use. I just wanted to show you the whole idea of the probability. The thing comes in because of the randomness of how we receive DNA from our ancestors. There can sometimes be a huge difference between what we share with people on the same level. So this is an example of how I matched two of my third cousins. They are full sisters, so they are siblings, but I share vastly different amounts with them. They're definitely my third cousins. There's lots of other tests and people who have tested and lots of other connections. They are definitely sisters. They're not half sisters. So it's all above board. The one sister I share 136 centimorgans, and with the other one I share 63, only 63. It's just to show you that the shared amounts are in ranges, and it can be vastly different between what you share with, in this case, two sisters, what I share with two sisters. For that reason, I use on the shared CM project also their tool where you can enter double amounts of DNA you share. Now, this tool is to use with two people who are closely related and you know their relationship. So if you know you should be, they are two siblings, so you should be related to them in exactly the same way. You can enter both of their centimorgans into the tool that is there for the double relationships. What this means is if I put the 136 in the original tool on the previous slide, I get 31 possible relationships with the one sister and 37 with the other sister. However, when I combine these two on this tool, I get only 27 possible relationships. So it narrows it down a bit, which helps a lot when we're doing research. Now, 27 still sounds like a lot. When you start work on it, you'll see it does make a huge difference if you have a little bit less to work with. Yes, so this is another handy part of the Shared CM project. Now, there's also a website by Britt Nicholson. She's also a member of our Facebook group, and it offers well, I think it's a female. I don't even know. Maybe it's a male. It's a website that there's quite a few tools, segment analysis tools, and I find because in this tool, you not only look at the centimorgans you share, but also the amount of segment share between people. Once again, you put both relationships in there. And in this case, it only left me with 17 possible relationships. So I find this DNA Psi tool of Brett Nicholson maybe a little bit better even than the Shared CM project. So it's definitely worth investigating. In this case, because I've got a lot of endogamy in my tree, when I use these tools, like in this instance, for example, it tells me that these two sisters are at the top. It's second cousin once removed group, which includes all those, with a 57% possibility. The second one is third cousin group, with a 36% possibility. Because I've got endogamy, when I get past the second cousin mark, I tend to use, in these estimations, the lower one of the first two. So in this instance, that they are third cousins to me. Because of the endogamy, I will always first investigate the person that's a little bit further away. We'll get to endogamy now, but the main problem is that we share more DNA than expected with people. This is just an example of another tool that's very handy to use. Now, chromosome browsers, Family Tree DNA and MyHeritage have chromosome browsers. When we look, for example, at autosomal DNA chromosome pair 4, on the right-hand side, we have to remember that our chromosome 4 pair came 50% from one parent and 50% from the other parent. Our chromosomes can be seen as double-sided. You can look at it as if it's one double-sided. And what you see in the chromosome browser is a blend of both sides. So it's a view of both sides blended. This chromosome browsers cannot yet separate our paternal and maternal sides automatically. So hopefully at some stage it will become more clear. But the thing you need to keep in the back of your mind, you only see the 23 chromosomes, but it's actually your mother and your father's on top of each other. So you don't know who matches you where by just looking at the chromosome browser. Now there's ways around this, so I'll show you. Okay, so the next step is triangulation. When you look at, when you're trying to solve a mystery, you'll dive straight in and look at shared matches between people. For example, say I was trying to find my biological grandfather. I would look at matches that I know could be on that side and look at shared matches. But in the end, we also have to keep triangulation in mind. It's much more accurate than just looking at shared matches. So the purpose of triangulation is to see whether three people who are not closely related share the same most recent common ancestor. So you want to know if all those three people share the most recent common ancestor. So you and two others is enough, because you don't then know if you share ancestors and you triangulate, you must be related to that same ancestor. So why do we do it? DNA triangulation can help you figure out how you're related to your DNA matches or identify an unknown ancestor in your family tree. You can also use triangulation to do segment triangulation to assign an ancestor to a segment of your DNA. So I've started this process, but I haven't gotten very far yet, where I'm trying to assign pieces of my DNA to a specific ancestor, and I would use triangulation to do that. When you look at your DNA matches and you find shared matches, so you look at one person and you see, okay, all this matches with this person, it does not mean they triangulate. It should only serve as a hint. Your shared matches must also share DNA with each other on the same segments. So in order to be able to do that, you need a chromosome browser. And this is where you remember your chromosomes are double-sided, and what you see in the chromosome browser is a blended view of both sides. So unfortunately, endogamy complicates matters a bit for us. But triangulation can be done in GEDmatch, but it's also easier. It's a lot easier on Family Tree DNA and MyHeritage. What we're trying to do in this case, I've got three people. So if I find that match 1, it's me in the green, match 1 and match 2, the pink ones, they share, both are shared matches for me. So it means that all three of us share DNA, but we have to look at whether these people are actually share with each other on the same segment as I share with them. And then we can work it back to their most recent common ancestor, and we can know we are related to that person as well. So the reason I'm saying that we need to do triangulation is I have, for example, shared matches where I match one person on my maternal side and another one on my paternal side, and they match each other through completely different ancestors on entirely different segments. So even though they are my shared matches, we don't triangulate because we do not all match each other on the same segment. So one is related through my mother, one is related to through my father. They match each other in a different way, but unfortunately we are all shared matches, but we do not triangulate. We don't share exact segments. So I cannot, you can't always just look at shared matches. You have to know whether these people triangulate if you're really trying to solve a mystery. So the way we would go about it, when we look at MyHeritage again and we click on Review DNA Match, this will give us a list of our shared matches. So if you review DNA match, you get a list of you at the top. So let me just go one step back. So remember, I click on a button next to a person. So, for example, the second one is a male. If I click on his purple button to the right saying review DNA match, I'm looking at myself and him. On the next screen, I've got myself on the left and the other person's button I've clicked on the right. It tells me here how I'm related to the person to a match and how this person is related to a match if he or she is related to the same person as I am. So we get our shared matches. Myself and that other person have a list of shared matches. To the right of it, there's an indication whether it triangulates. When it triangulates, it means myself and the person's button I've clicked on definitely, and this third person definitely shares the same ancestor, one of our ancestors. The second one in our shared matches as well, it's also got the little triangulation sign there. So it means we all share myself, the person I've clicked on, and the second one shares some or other ancestor somewhere. All three of us have the same ancestor. The third one in the list have no triangulation indicated there. It means that even though myself and the person's button I've clicked on share that match, we do not triangulate. So it means there's a possibility that we are not related to the same, all three of us are not related to the same ancestor. Okay, so this gets all a little bit hard. So if you then go to the chromosome browser in MyHeritage, it shows it like this. Triangulation means there's a little box around the segment, and not triangulating just shows two on top of each other. So in family tree DNA, in order to be able to do triangulation in family tree DNA, your matches need to be assigned to buckets. So you assign people to buckets, then you put a tick box next to their name. So for example, I need to look at my specific bucket. So I'm looking at matches only on my father's side. If I click on those and tick boxes for 2 matches on my dad's side, and I go to the chromosome browser and there's segments that are on top of each other, it means they triangulate. But I have to pick only people from my one bucket, only from my father's bucket. You'll be able to see triangulation there. Now, another segment triangulation example that we can do in GEDmatch, it's a little bit more complicated. It's less visual. But just thank you, Teresa. I don't think she's in this meeting today, but she allowed me to use her as an example. And for this example, I'm ignoring endogamy and pedigree collapse for this exercise. So I have 2 people, AA and BB, and I know they probably have only one recent common ancestor. I can see that both of them match Teresa, and I want to know if Teresa and them share an ancestor, and then find that most recent common ancestor. The mere fact that they are Teresa's shared matches is not enough proof of Teresa sharing the same most recent common ancestor with both AA and BB. And triangulation needs to be done first. You can use GEDmatch 1-to-1 autosomal DNA comparison as follows. You compare the segments AA and BB shares, then you compare Teresa's, what she shares with A, and Teresa in what Teresa shares with BB. There needs to be at least one matching segment occurring in all 3 comparisons, the same one, in order to prove the same most recent common ancestor for all 3. You have to always do all 3 comparisons. Even if you don't know the most recent common ancestor between any of these people, you can still use triangulation to decide whether their tree are worth comparing to find a common ancestor. If Teresa was looking for an unknown biological father, which she's not, she would have built trees downwards for all the descendants of the most recent common ancestor in order to close in on her biological family. Triangulation is important, and like I said, it's easier to do it in family tree DNA and MyHeritage, a little bit harder in GEDmatch, but it's still possible. Okay, so let's talk about endogamy. First, I want to say what endogamy is not. So endogamy has nothing to do with first cousin marriages. So if someone say you're part of the endogamous population, it does not mean it's because your grandparents were first cousins. This is not what endogamy is. Endogamy is marrying within the same ethnic, social group, or even social class. It often happens by chance. So isolated groups of people that don't have regular contact with people from other areas. So endogamy happens when there are marriages between third, fourth, and fifth cousins. So it's higher up in the tree, and it happens over and over. So genetically, it doesn't create a problem. When this happens over and over, or when this happens only over a few generations in a population, we call it pedigree collapse. And people end up with, for example, instead of the usual 64 unique fourth great grandparents, maybe with only 60 fourth great grandparents. And then a more severe form of pedigree collapse is endogamy. So you'll often say, hear people talk about that they're part of endogamous population, but in reality, is someone like me, my paternal side they were voortrekkers, so they moved to Potchefstroom and then Rustenburg. So they became quite an isolated group of people. So there's a lot of fourth and fifth cousin marriages, but still mine is not. It is endogamy, but it's not severe. So a small endogamous population might look like this. You can see higher up in the chart, there's marriages between people that are not directly cousins, they're fourth or fifth cousins. So if I look at, this is severe pedigree collapse. So this is something that happens in Leah Larkin, for example, who does a lot of research around endogamy. This is her Jewish population, the endogamy. You can see they all end up in a few people at the top. All the branches connect to each other. It's not her first cousin. There's no first cousin marriages. It's higher up. So it's fifth cousins that marry each other, and she ended up being related to all of them this way. So this is a really more severe form of endogamy. So I'll show you now what mine looks like. So this is what mine looks like. And even you can see from my mother and father's side. So I'm right at the bottom, the pink dot at the bottom. And you can see even fourth and fifth cousin marriages between my parents' side. This is what happens in endogamous populations. So I'll go into more detail on the Afrikaner one now, but I've got the links. I've shared the links with you where you could have a look at your own. So when you upload your family tree there, it's done on your computer. So it's not like you upload it and store there. It's run. The software is run on your computer. You don't have to download anything. It is a website. But I've also included the link to the instructions of how to work with this. Leah Larkin is the DNA geek. So she's done this for us. So how does this present in the DNA? How does this present in the DNA results of an endogamous population? It means we are often related to our matches in more than one way. We therefore share more DNA than is typical for the relationship distance. You share a lot of DNA with your matches, but it's made out of small segments. So Leah Larkin has done an analysis for me on 9 of my kids to determine the level of endogamy in the Afrikaner population. So both my parents are from the Afrikaner population. My dad's side is definitely a little bit more endogamous because of the fact that they were part of the Voortrekkers. My mum's family ended up in Transvaal a little bit later, but still, there's still endogamy there as well. Leah Larkin classified the Afrikaner population as moderate endogamy. Her advice, and this correlates with what I have also previously experienced, matches above 200 centimorgans are likely to be in the predicted range that all these tools will tell you. But you should be cautious below 200 centimorgans. This table on the left shows the average length of shared segments, which is the total centimorgans divided by the number of shared segments. If we look at fourth cousin, for example, one would normally see a match which shares about 40 centimorgans listed as a fourth cousin in all the tables and tools. In non-endogamous populations, the average length of shared segments of a 40 centimorgan match is 18 centimorgans. But in our endogamous population, the average length of segments is just 12.2 centimorgans. It means that our 40 centimorgan match is made up of lots of tiny segments, whereas a non-endogamous population is made up of 2 or so bigger segments. If you are part of of our endogamous populations and a match is shown as a fourth cousin, it probably isn't. It could be a sixth cousin through more than one line. So it just means you have to be cautious with any matches below 200 centimorgans, as that might mean they spread over various lines and they further from you than the tools indicate. This is another example that I've a table that I've set up from my matches. So if I look, for example, at the third one from the bottom, Adri, I share 81 centimorgans with her. All the tools will tell me that she's around a third cousin. But in reality, we are fourth cousins once removed and sixth cousins. So we've got two relationships there that makes it look like we're third cousins. But once again, she's a match for me lower than 200 centimorgans. So if I look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from AB and M sister, I haven't worked out the relationship yet, but they share quite a bit. So we need to work out what is happening there. Teresa and I, for example, even though she shares more than 200 with me, we are still two relationships, third cousins and second cousins, once removed, and the top estimate usually says second cousin, which you're getting closer to it because the closest relationship is second cousins once removed. So over 200, it gets easier, and you can sort of trust all the tools with what they're telling you what the relationship is. So you just need to keep, so the way we deal with this is you just need to keep it all in mind when you're trying to find the most recent common ancestor for someone further than second cousins away. There may be more than one common ancestor and they will be further away. So the best way to deal with it is to test multiple close family members along different lines. And just another note, the Leeds method, it's a popular one of separating your matches, or MyHeritage Auto Cluster tool is often not of much help for us. So even if you're in a group and they will tell you use the Leeds method or use the MyHeritage Auto Cluster tool, it might not work as well for you if you are part of the endogamous community. Try it, but it is not as accurate and it's not as helpful as it is for people who are not in endogamous populations. Leah Larkin has a new tool. It's called the Banyan DNA. She's with others. She's created there's a few tools, but it's for visualizing and analyzing complex genealogies, such as endogamous ones. It's free to play around with it. Or use casually, but otherwise you'll need a subscription if you want to do some more. I think you're only allowed one project and only a small tree or something like that when you use it, the free tool. But it is very helpful for endogamous populations. I will touch on this again when I talk about the way we solve a mystery. I'll come back to these tools and mention them again. So let's look at extra tests. I'm once again coming back to this slide, which explains that Y-DNA and autosomal and X-DNA is in the cell nucleus. And the other test we have is a mitochondrial DNA test. That mDNA test, the mtDNA is located in the mitochondria, not in the cell nucleus. So it is important not to confuse that with X-match, because X-match includes the mothers as well. Mitochondrial is something completely separate, and we'll get to it. With the mtDNA and then the Y-DNA, the special Y-DNA test, not the ones that are part of the DNA test is included. You get special Y-DNA test, which I will discuss here. With the mtDNA and the Y-DNA tests, they are extra tests available from only family tree DNA. So the full proper Y-DNA test is only available from family tree DNA, and mtDNA is also only available from them. You get match lists and you get a haplogroup assigned to you. I will now discuss the mtDNA, which is the mitochondrial. Remember, that's not in the cell nucleus. It sits completely separately in the mitochondria. So mtDNA tests are deep ancestry tests. So it's your maternal origin. So mothers. Anyone can test, and it's only available for family tree DNA. And it's not to be confused with the X sex chromosome. This is something different. It's a different DNA test, different type of DNA, and mitochondrial DNA is passed down by females only. A male inherits his mother's, but can't pass it on. So all a male's children, all his children can get their mothers, nothing from him. So this is based on a reconstructed Sapiens reference group, or Eve. Your DNA is compared to her. So FTDNA shows you mutations from Eve. It is deep ancestry, which means that your matches can be closely related or share an ancestor more than 1,000 years ago. So it's not good for finding cousins or expanding trees. Your matches are shown with genetic distances. So a 0 genetic distance. I've only got one genetic distances of 1 and 2 and further away, but a 0 matches are shown with a genetic distance. A 0 genetic distance means that it's 50% likely the common ancestor between you and your match is within 5 generations. Only a 50% probability. mtDNA is very, very stable. First cousins are often exactly the same. So it means like you might even be the same as your second cousin. So it is very, very hard to distinguish between, to use it as a way to find cousins and find people's position in a tree. The only, like one of the questions we got asked in one of the earlier sessions was, can I use mtDNA to figure out a slave in my mtDNA line? So remember, as long as you only look at mother, all the way back, if that leads you to a slave, your haplogroup will show where that mtDNA originated from, and it should indicate that it is from a slave ancestry and not European, for example. If you look at on GenAI, you can create a free account on GenAI. They always ask for subscription, but you can get past that screen and just have a free account. Under the research menu there, you can find projects, and there's a project for female progenitors in South Africa, for example, and I've added mine under Anna Maria Peters de Leeuw. I've got all the source documents available for every mother all the way back. It's a little bit harder to research because it's not surname based, and surname change with every generation. But I've researched it back to Anna Maria Peters de Leeuw for myself, and my husband for Margarita is the Savoy. So we have the haplogroups there. So in essence, if you are able to trace yours back after you've done an mtDNA, you should arrive at the same haplogroup if you are also from mtDNA descendant of these people. There are quite a few that's been done. This is just an example of mine and my husband's. So let's look at Y-DNA. That is now your paternal origins. So your father's father's father. This is for males only. The Y chromosome is a sex chromosome, and only males receive this. So only males can do the Y-DNA test, and it's the proper full DNA analysis, Y-DNA analysis is only available from Family Tree DNA. Once again, you will get a haplogroup and a list of matches. So once again, it's deep ancestry, hundreds of thousands of years in the past. Matches can be closely related or share an ancestor thousands of years ago. Once again, it's generally not good for finding cousins or expanding trees. And mutations happen more often than with mtDNA. And also the mutations are indicated by genetic distance. There are haploproject groups on Family Tree DNA, and I have to say the administrators are usually very responsive and willing to help. Some autosomal tests, 23andMe, Ancestry, and MyHeritage, contain a few hundred Y-DNA markers, and the Y-DNA data from these tests is of a much lower quality, but it can provide a very general Y-DNA haplogroup. Now, two uses of on the next screen, I'll show you two uses of Y-DNA, or some uses of it, but two examples where I have specifically used it. So can the test be helpful in solving a mystery for a female tester? In a way, yes. So in search of a biological father, a surname may be evident if enough people with that surname have tested. So if the male tester searches biological father and you get, for example, 20 Snyman matches, it's most likely that that biological father will be a Snyman. It's also a good option if there's a mystery in the paternal line, like where does this line originate from? It will give you a broad answer like a Europe or a Asia or something. So this is the example I've used in one of the, quickly touched on in one of my previous sessions. I've explained that my husband, he was very unsure what his ancestry was past his great-grandfather. We had very, very little. And when we did a Y-DNA test, he got assigned haplogroup of HM52. And when you look at where that most of the testers who have that HM2052, they're all in India, Sri Lanka, Indonesia is basically the top. And I mean, there's Uzbekistan, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia. So this indicated to us that it's not a European, his line is not from a European descent. It is definitely something else. So we have figured out the Pedro surname now, and we know more or less where it happened, or we know exactly where it happened. But it was possible. It put me on the right path by knowing where his line originated from, and I knew then Farrell wasn't right. He's not from Irish descent. It's in search of a biological father. Testing another male may include or exclude a branch. So I'm currently busy helping Nicolene with the finding her biological her grandfather's biological parents. So we're waiting for a Y-DNA test. Her father is tested, and we've gotten to a level where we know who her grandfather and mother, in which family group he belongs, but we don't know whether he's related to a male or a female in that line we found, in that tree we found. So testing a male descendant in that tree will lead us, will show us if her father shares a Y-DNA with that male, is related to the male side of that tree. But it can't show you cousins or include or exclude cousins. It will only show you very broadly where this leads to. Before we get to the end, I've touched on this diagram of where to test. So I'll just, now that I've spoken about the Y-DNA test and the mtDNA, you can look at this again of, do you want to do an autosomal test? If not, and you want to specifically test Y-DNA or mtDNA, then test with family tree DNA. If you want to do an autosomal test, and is it an elderly person and the saliva test may be a problem, or you want to do maybe Y-DNA and mtDNA in future, then test it from family tree DNA and upload to MyHeritage and GEDmatch. If none of those are applicable, test it Ancestry and upload it family tree DNA, MyHeritage and GEDmatch. But what I also always say is, it is harder to get an ancestry test to you. So instead of not testing because you can't get an ancestry test to you, test at family tree DNA or even MyHeritage. Just do a test anyway. Any test is better than nothing. And even though you're not in the database for ancestry then, at least you've started the process and you've done your test. I'd say, any test about over nothing. But yes, it's just, if you can get ancestry, get ancestry. The reality is also that you often might start off with an ancestry test, but then later want to do a Y-DNA and mtDNA, which just means you have to get another kit to you. If you already think that you might do Y-DNA and mtDNA and you do not have a pressing reason to test that ancestry, you might as well test that family tree DNA.
Right. Anybody got questions for Linda?
Hi, Linda. It's Johan Smith
Hi, Johan.
speaking. I'm just checking. I use ethnicity as well to find strange combinations that stands out. Do you also make use of that?
To be honest, no. I find it too inaccurate most times. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for. If it is something that you really, you know, if yours is of in a way that it can lead to something. But for example, with the Y-DNA, connecting my husband with the Asian population, none of the ethnicity estimates even show that, and that was his great-grandfather. So it's not even that far away. So he's from his great-grandfather further back. It should show in his DNA. So it's only in the recent ancestry update for the first time that it actually showed Sardinia. But other than that, family tree DNA, MyHeritage, nothing. So the chances of solving something with it is it's very small, and it can, because it's only estimates, it can be very inaccurate, and with every refinement of those, your whole percentage will change. But I mean, if you found ways to use it, and you can, for your specific case, use it, that's all good.
Just as a matter of interest, I tried to help to find, or not tried, I helped to find one of my schoolmates' biological parents. And he was quite a mystery because he was born in Zimbabwe in the 70s. And the ethnicity helped me quite a lot there because I could quickly determine that his parents were not from either South Africa or Zimbabwe. That they were coming from, there was a strong USA mix, and there was quite a strong English mix. And David Slingsby that talked about his family. What was very interesting is because he had such a strong English background, it could pinpoint the area in England, which was Oldham, for matches. So you do breakthroughs there. And then on the American side, I saw that he had quite a lot of matches in North Carolina. And like you said, that every little bit of piece of information that you get can make a breakthrough. And when I interviewed a couple of people, I asked about young people at that age that was French, because I managed to get the mother within a month with DNA. And then I asked other people, you know, who was the same age French. And then the one person said to me, no, there was a guy from America, and his parents put up a farm there, and they called it Carolina Estates. And you don't believe the coincidence. And yeah, that was the breakthrough that led me to the
That was the
father.
breakthrough. Yeah. No, very interesting. Small pieces of information can lead to a breakthrough.
Linda, we seem to have exhausted all the questions, so that all remains is for me to thank you for this, for giving up your time and for the most interesting presentation that you've made. By the number of people attending, I think we only had one or two that fell by the roadside, which is a good indication that it was well received. So thank you very, very much. It will be recorded, and in due course it will be on YouTube, and we will circulate the link once it has happened. So I thank you all for attending the meeting,